that kid deserves a voice and that kid deserves someone or something to stand up and speak up for them. So I think that if intactivists were to choose not to talk about, I feel like that would be very, very unfair to the Jewish children who are now losing a voice and losing an advocate if people are not willing to talk about it. So
We are back with Melina's part two interview. If you missed part one, you can go back and watch that before this one if you want. I just want to inform you guys, Melina did go to college for communications. So I would say she is a trained expert in communications. And what better person in addressing such a precarious topic as the topic that we're going to be talking about today? This is perhaps one of the hardest conversations to have as an intactivist, especially when addressing a crowd. And for this reason, I left some of the pauses in the video. I just 3 times sped it up just so you can kind of see her thinking. Since we're on the topic of speaking out and being able to have an open conversation with one another, one of the biggest hot topic buttons in intactivism is Judaism. So when I say Judaism, I am talking about the religion, not the race, just so we're understanding of that. So first off, are you comfortable about talking about this subject? Because I know some are not.
I know that some are very, very much not. And because of that, it does, I feel a little caution around it. But I don't believe in not doing things just because they're uncomfortable. So I'm definitely willing to have this conversation. It's one that I'm still forming for myself. So go for it. We can do it.
All right, awesome. So first of all, thank you, because a lot of people are afraid to have this conversation. But do you think intactivism and Judaism are compatible?
Okay, well, loaded question, loaded answer. Let's break it down a little bit. There are many different forms of Judaism. There's just, the full, what you would consider the most extreme. And then I've heard that there's some that are still practicing most of it, like the religious stuff, all but the circumcision part. And so obviously, two totally different topics, right? Because no one's going to have an issue with the religion at all and activists if it doesn't involve the circumcision of the child. So I believe that the middle ground of the people in Judaism who believed in their faith, cared about all the other parts of their religion, but were still able to say, but it stops right before I let someone take a knife to my kid. I believe that that kind of is the existence of those two groups together being able to get along. Where I don't think intactivists particularly have a problem with the Jewish religion other than that one thing, right? And so the hard thing, though, is as for the other group that is dead set on never letting go of that, I don't know how they could get along. But hang on, let me make sure I don't regret that statement. I don't know how they could get along if they were talking about it. Like, I mean, yeah, you could get along and just agree not to talk about it. But I don't know how they could agree. Let's put it that way. Because on one end, well, hey, the common ground might be that both parents believe they're doing the best thing for their child, or they've been manipulated to believe that. So if you could try to get that common ground and use it, maybe. But because the beliefs are so different on what actually is protecting that child. From the religious perspective, that child's eternal soul is like being insured, protected, salvation, secured, all that stuff. Like that's really, really, really important to religious people. And then on the other end, I don't want my child to be hurt. I don't want this decision to permanent decision to be made on their body without, their consent and everything. That's another form of protection. So they're both trying to do what's best for the child, but on the one end, they believe that the uncut child is like not protected from evil, is not going to make it to heaven or whatever. I mean, I don't know exactly what all the beliefs are, but my point is the reason that they did it was for all of the benefits that they thought they were giving their child. That's the same reason over here that the parents aren't doing it. So if we could try to find common ground and just say, hey, you know what? I know that really there's parent love the parents have for their children, and we make decisions based on that. And maybe could we just, knowing that you love your child, I love my child, we're both doing the best we can, could we maybe now just sit down, and I would be willing to communication. I'm always saying that. You got to be able to be willing to listen to them explain and at least hear them out, even if in the back of your mind you're saying, I don't believe that. Like you have to be able to listen, because when it's your turn, they need to be able to listen to you too. And if you can create that space with them and say, hey, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear the part in your voice where your heart skips a beat, and I can tell that you're pouring your heart out and you're trying to like tell me how you feel. Feel that with them. Empathize. Well, yes, I'm going to say it. Empathize with them if you can, or have sympathy. Like you see that parent, oh, and their anxiety, and they're just trying to do the right thing, but they're as nervous as you were. So, I mean, can they get along? I think they can, but only if the two sides are, number one, a willing to not be hostile and to agree to disagree. And there's got to be respect somehow, because without respect, we can't communicate. Without communicating, we can't get the information out and try to change some minds. So they could potentially, but I think it would take a lot more happening in the media, encouraging communication and encouraging the different perspectives. So that's a hard one, because intactivists that have already come to the understanding that it's not okay to violate a child's body like that, they're not going to come around to someone else explaining their emotional, religious reasoning for it. So I don't know if they could. I don't know. I guess those were just some spitballing ideas about how they could maybe try to.
Yeah,
But
because
ultimately, I think if they could just at least stop circumcising their babies and just stick with the rest of it, I don't think there'd be a problem.
yeah, because whenever you said, well, agree to disagree, well, the child still gets, it still gets amputated at the end of the day if you agree to disagree. So then
Right.
that conversation didn't go very well. Because I mean, I feel like getting along isn't necessarily the objective of the intactivist. It's saving the child.
Right.
And my question is what argument can you even use against God? If someone believes that a all-powerful deity is commanding them to do something, like how can you combat that?
Well, every time this particular thing has come up and people like quote the scriptures, for example. Well, first of all, even if they haven't quoted the scriptures yet, I'm like, and why do you believe that? Why do you believe it was ordained by God or whatever? And then usually they either quote it or they say, well, it's in the Bible. And full disclosure, I'm being a hypocrite because I don't have it currently memorized, but having it handy off the top of your head, the other references in the Bible that literally said you don't need to circumcise. Like I think it was Jesus himself that said something like, "You're like that's not in favor of, I don't favor that." I don't know who said it, not exactly, but you know what I mean.
It was
Um,
St. Paul, but yeah.
so and just bring that up. It's like, well, which part of the Bible? The part where they say cut your kid, or the part where they say don't cut your kid? And then also realize you're the parent and you get to choose which one. Why not choose the one where you don't have to cut your kid if it's in the Bible? Either way. So it's like you got to just ask them, it's like, well, which point are you justifying? Do you want it to be pro circumcision? Because then you can quote the pro circumcision parts of the Bible. Do you want the answer to be anti circumcision? Because then just quote those parts of the Bible. And when you kind of make them see that, wow, okay, well, toss of the coin toss, I guess, or make a decision for yourself. When I really realized that there was such a huge community on both sides, like because I was so afraid of what people would think. And I didn't know anyone who hadn't circumcised their kid. And I didn't know any guys that weren't circumcised. And I don't know why I was so worried about, like, I mean, but I was so young at the time. I cared what everybody thought. And then after realizing how many other people were on the other side of it that were like, no, like, we would never do that. And I'm like, how did I not know anyone in my life that had that mentality? I like that mentality better. And when I realized that I would receive the support that I wanted from either side, I could either choose to cut my baby and I could go over to this side and I would have a million voices. Oh, me too, but you did the right thing, mama. Or I could go over here where there's not a bunch of screaming babies and bloody diapers and everyone's saying, we hear you. We also did it, and it's fine. We support you. And look, it's okay. So if you're going to get that on either side, why not choose the world where it doesn't require a blood ritual sacrifice on your child? So it comes down to choices in that way, I think.
Hi, it's Scott, interrupting the interview for a moment to tell you about Potts's e-commerce program. To use it, you get the links from what you want to buy on Amazon or eBay, then you send them to Potts through X or Discord in a direct message or on order ideas on Discord, and Potts will post them in the comments on a YouTube video or in an X post. Then you follow those links that are connected to Potts's Amazon or eBay store, and you buy those items, and Potts will get a percentage of that sale. This funds Potts's expenses to promote the channel and contract with other Intactivists. This does not cost you any extra money. All right, thank you, and back to the interview.
Do you think that Judaism gets special treatment as a movement?
Okay, so this is a touchy subject, as you well know. So it's a little hard to talk about it without feeling like you're going to get in trouble. And so I'm going to use that as an example, actually. Right now, and I don't know how for how long it's been going on, but everyone is scared to talk about it. And if you're scared to talk about something, that thing has more power because you have already stepped off of kind of coming at it in any way. So, I had an example I was going to use, but
Is it Voldemort?
no, it wasn't Voldemort. But people are really afraid of being accused of being anti-Semitic, right? Because obviously, for example, I don't hate the Jews. And I would hate someone to think that I hated the Jews, which is what anti-Semitic means to me. So nobody wants to be labeled that when obviously they don't. However, people are getting labeled as that simply for saying, now hang on, I might not be okay with all of this though. Like some of this I might not agree with. And it's okay to disagree with an idea, and that doesn't automatically mean that you like hate the people. So I don't know what it is exactly that is made this happen for everyone to be so afraid to talk about it and for others to be so angry and so quick to jump and attack whoever the messenger is. I don't know what created that. But because of that, you could say that that has created an atmosphere of special treatment. I just remembered a little quote I was going to give. I really love this. I heard it yesterday, and it was that courage is the greatest of all the virtues, that which without it, no other virtues exist. Because if you have no courage, you're not going to have integrity. You're not going to be honest. You're not going to do those things that require courage to like stand up for those virtues. So it made me think of that just now. If people don't have the courage to say what needs to be said, they're not going to say it. So special treatment in so much as there is such a state of fear around it right now that nobody's feeling brave. So nobody is speaking out. And because of that, I think that creates another state of I can get away with whatever I want because I just keep getting away with it because no one's going to say anything to me. And it's just like when bullying goes unchecked, you know, or a serial killer, they get away with a couple of murders and then they're like, heck yeah, like look how well that worked out for me. So I don't know who to point the finger at though on who started that or why it's happening necessarily, but I do think that there is an unfair advantage to no one wanting to question you because no one wants to be attacked for being accused of being something that they don't identify as. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's kind of how I see it a little bit.
Oh, okay. So, do you think in general intactivists should avoid talking about Judaism?
Whoa, whoa. That is a hard one because, like you said, ultimately it comes down to the child and it comes down to that child's rights. And I mean, honestly, it does not matter if a kid is Jewish or if a kid is Christian. That kid deserves a voice and that kid deserves someone or something to stand up and speak up for them. So I think that if intactivists were to choose not to talk about, damn, I feel like that would be very, very unfair to the Jewish children who are now losing a voice and losing an advocate if people are not willing to talk about it. So I would say I'm never going to tell people to not talk about what needs to be talked about just because it's hard, but I'm always going to say approach it with caution, approach it with respect, approach it with empathy, compassion, understanding, your superhuman power to bite your tongue, whatever you need to. If you don't have that self-control, if you don't have that emotional discipline, if you don't have that emotional intelligence, then don't. Maybe you're not the guy. Stick with what you're good at. And if you feel like you're very, very diplomatic and you're very good at finding your way around and you're a great negotiator, whatever, do it. Please, you should be. We need those voices, especially on the harder topics. But if you're someone who it's neither their strong suit nor their interest to make it one, they maybe just stick with what you're good at and help the people that you can help. And, but honestly, if there's something that needs to be talked about, I'm never going to say, let's not talk about it. I'm really not. I'm going to say it might take a little bit longer and it might be a little bit more complicated, but it's just as important because the bottom line is it's being talked about because there's little kids without a voice that are getting the knife taken to them. And in that respect, those kids getting strapped down or held down, they don't give a shit what the reasons are that it's happening. So it needs to be talked about and it should be done so delicately. But you know what? I talk about circumcision all the time. I talk about the non-benefits. I talk about the trauma. I talk about everything that happens. And I don't bring up Israel. But you know what? An Israeli mom or a Jewish mom seeing my video and a Christian mom seeing my video, neither one of them is going to feel like I called them out on their religion. But both of them are going to get the information and both of them are going to say, hey, that's a different perspective. And I don't want either one of them to feel called out and judged. So maybe we can do it without having to make it about that. Because again, the point is what's going to happen to the child if we don't, and the communication that should happen around that. So do we need to make it about that in order to keep talking about it? But if it does need to be made about that, do it respectfully and do it with great regard for the emotions and the people involved. Because when you start getting into religion and God, you're going really deep inside people's core beliefs, and you cannot be a bull in a china shop in there. You guys, that's just common decency 101. Have respect for the fact that everyone is at their own level of consciousness. Everyone is at their own level of education. and everybody is also at their own level of emotional intelligence and trying to navigate things for themselves. They're probably scared. And like I said, they've got fear and the desire to do what's best for their child in most cases. I know some people wanted to argue with that. I believe most parents are trying to do the right thing. Of the good parents, yes, there's terrible parents out there. Let's go ahead and assume that those are not the ones we're talking about. There's bad parents that do all kinds of tough stuff. But I think what matters is that we do keep communicating as parents, but we stay really respectful about it. And I don't think it's fair for there to be any kind of special treatment or discrimination, because there's special treatment, and then there's also you could say it's special treatment to like the Jews that are whatever, no one's giving them backlash or telling them not to do it, but that kid's not getting special treatment, he's getting the opposite of it. So communication and respect are vital to it all.
Do you think the risk of talking about Judaism, do you think that's worth the potential reward that you may get out of that?
Well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to be accused of being anti-Semitic. And I assume it's going to be done via the internet in some social media type way. You're going to probably have the opportunity to come out and make a statement to correct it and say, believe what you want, but that's not what I said. Like, that's just kind of something that happens to people when you get a little bigger and people notice you anyway. But the risk to you is that you might feel a little embarrassed and you might have to deal with some probably mostly harmless, but trolls on the internet. That's the risk to you. The risk to the child is the possibility of death, the guarantee of amputation and trauma, and brain damage. That's the risk versus benefit on the one side to the child. On your side, you might have a rough minute, and it might involve feeling a little embarrassed or feeling attacked or having to defend yourself and literally having some text battle on the internet. But if you can get through to the benefit, definitely outweighs, because I also just realized if you can actually change the mind of a religious person on it, you haven't just helped that one kid, you have likely created a paradigm shift in that family that will ripple out and possibly save generations from it as well. Because religious stuff tends to repeat generationally. So, well, and culturally as well. But I would say that there's way greater benefit to you trying, because the risk to you is so small in comparison to the risk to the child if you don't try at all. So how thick is your skin? Can you handle a couple of internet trolls? I mean, I've had it pretty bad. I literally had somebody try to convince me to kill myself on the internet, and it messed with me. It fucked with me. It really did, but I'm still here. I grew a thicker skin. You can do that too. And every time you choose to grow a thicker skin rather than stay quiet, grow a thicker skin instead of having somebody else have to suffer. That's what I think. In my opinion, for me, it's worth it to say something. But I've been through it already. I've already been accused of being anti-Semitic. I've had my name posted on an anti-Semitic page before for literally posting an interview by a rabbi. People were literally angry about what the rabbi himself said. So, you know what? People are going to be mad at you no matter what you do sometimes. You just have to stick with the resolve that you know you did the right thing based on what you believe. So it depends on what it's worth it to you. Is it more worth it to you to avoid a little bit of discomfort? Or is it more worth it to you to be courageous and be the person that spoke up and that did something? So that's a personal choice. Is it worth benefits, versus the risks? To me, it is. For me, it would be. For somebody else, I don't know. And if it's not, if you being a little bit uncomfortable isn't worth the risk of possibly maybe saving a child's life, then I strongly recommend you do some exercises and bravery. Read the book Rejection Proof, because it's okay to not be loved by everybody all the time. And that was a hard one for me.
All right. So, do you think the majority of mainstream intactivist groups, do you think they are afraid of Judaism?
Ooh, honestly, I don't I don't know if I know enough to be comfortable like spouting any kind of numbers on that. But what I've seen is in some of the ones that I personally know, their feelings towards it have become more amplified in the direction of fear. And I think that's because things are getting so much more heated around the world that when you do face backlash, it's a lot harsher than it used to be. For example, yesterday's events, that definitely shook a lot of us to the core that speak up for what we believe in and what we stand for. And that was proof of just exactly how extreme it can go when someone's, coming at you for what you said. So do what you can to fight that fear, you guys, because that will keep you painted in a corner and you're going to go from one corner to the next corner. So work through those fears, you guys. We're grown-ups now. We're supposed to face our fears and break through that, because anytime you have a fear, there's usually just something on the other side of it it's kind of like you've outgrown your shell. And that fear is the breaking out of your shell part to like step into the next you. So anywhere you have a fear, you guys, break through that. Because remember, most likely the worst that you're going to face is some people saying some shitty comments. And guess what? You always have the choice not to read those. You always have the choice to not even feel the need to defend yourself. Like, who are your people? Do your people know you? Are they going to care? And are they going to like be on your side? Like, how confident of that are you? Are you surrounded by a bunch of fake people where if that happened, your whole world would fall apart? In which case, I encourage you to, again, take a closer look at your life and yourself and see if some changes need to be made. But I'm a big believer that we shouldn't shy away from things just because they're scary, because you come to find out that it's the scary things that give you the most reward. And sometimes the price is really, really high. I don't know if you wanted this brought up on your show or not, but Charlie paid the really, really high price yesterday. Most of us will never have to pay a price that high. The higher price is going through your whole life, never making a difference and not speaking up and not saving any children. I know for a fact, no child born of me will ever circumcise a child. No grandchild of mine, no great-grandchild of mine. It will be so deeply embedded in all of them as just their virtues and values. So I know I made that difference in my lifetime. I know that the few children that I've saved, that parents that have called me and said, hey, because of your posts on Facebook, like, I had no idea, but now because of that, I'm holding my intact son and I'm so thankful. That's enough for me. I haven't done enough yet. Sure. Like I'm still young. I'm going to keep going. But what do you want to be remembered for, you guys? Because you really don't know how long you have and you really don't know how extreme it could be. But don't stay small just because you're too scared of what could maybe possibly happen. It doesn't matter what could maybe possibly happen if literally nothing happens instead. So yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent on that one, but fear is a thing that's been coming up for me lately, especially when it comes to sticking up for what you believe in and following through on what matters to you. So these are all just passionate things for me right now. And I definitely think people need to push through that fear and just keep going and do the right thing, even if it's hard.
Right, that was our returning guest, Melina's part 2 interview. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Just make sure you keep it within the YouTube guidelines, please, or join my Discord where you can speak a little bit more freely about this topic. I'm going to put all of Melina's links down in the description so you can follow and support her if you want. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss part 3 of Melina's interviews and our other Intactivist content we release every single week. Please share and like this video to get this out to more people. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Bye! Prevail.
position.